My name is Lisa Rodriguez, and today I'm going to introduce you to a woman who has great importance and impact on the history of the feminist movement, one of the most recognized modernist writers in the 20th century. I talk about Virginia Woolf. Adeline Virginia Stephen was a writer who was born in London in January 25, 1882, came from a somewhat healthy family with her parents and 8 siblings. Her father was a distinguished critical and historian, and her mother was a model. That was time that this was founded about for women to attain a formal education. She was educated by private tutors and by her father. She had access to an emerged library and was able to have contact with the son of the future of Victorian literature. Another important aspect is that Virginia had a mental disorders to continuous depressions began at the age of 13 with the death of her mother and 2 years later with the death of her stepsister Stella. At the age 23, her father died of cancer, and Virginia suffers a nervous breakdown. She also suffers constant abuse of her stepbrothers Gerald and George. Her constant crises and depression produce bipolar disorder. In 1905, Virginia with her brother and sister moved to Bluesburys, where they formed the artistic literary Bluesbury Group. There she met her husband, Leonard Woolf, whom she married in 5 years later, at the age of 13 years old. She also had 10 years romantic relationship with the writer and garden designer Vita Sackville West, while they were both married. And 5 years later, Virginia and Leonard found the Hot Girl Press publishing house, which published much of her work and the other writers of times, such as the dramaturg H.T. Eliot, the psychoanalyst Sigmund Freud. However, Regina's bipolar disorder remained constant at the end of her life. She couldn't continue writing, and on March 28, 1941, she had the decision of committing suicide. One of her coat, healing with the stones, and jumped into the right ocean near her house. Her body was found a month later. Virginia left a famous suicide note dedicated to her husband, expressing all the happiness that Leonard brought to her life. A woman must have money and a roof of her own if she wants to write fiction. This is a very famous phrase from Virginia. It relates to an essay called A Roof of One's Own, which I'm going to do a brief review, and you know how this was the war as the video could be seen by children. I will explain with cartoon. The history of this essay is framed between in the time known as the interwar period. There was a period in the context that marked the end of the First World War and the beginning of the Second World War. And yeah, this was something like that. Virginia published this essay in 1929, based in 2 letters about women and fictions that she delivered at Newman College in Girton College, Women's Constitutes College of the University of Cambridge. Virginia used metaphor to explore social injustice and comment on the lack of the freedom of the expression of women, or the influence of the social speculation of women as only housewives and ignorance, and the control of the literature has been great to the patriarchal domination. Virginia is going to speak as herself, but as an actor may merit, or as she says, Call me whatever you want, I can be whatever I want. Mary goes to the give some talks at the university and begins to reflect on the university, her content, female fiction, the artists and the professional roles of women. This reflects the conditions, situation and limitation that women live in that time. This was moving and traumatic that in the essay she tells us about bibliographic reference of scientific books where this was proven that women were an inferior being. She also emphasized in the independence, economical, and intellectual freedom to create artistic works. Virginia examined the career of different authors, including Alfred Ben, Jane Austen, the Bronte sisters, Anne Finch, the content of Winchelsea, George Eliot, and others. And this is why Virginia mentioned that the woman needs a room of her own. Since even though they did write literature, words that never had a room or a physical place, but also had a place to express themselves. Since most words, books, or publications that we write about women will write by men. They must be taken into account something very important. We are facing an essay and not a novel. This essay isn't intended to mess with the men, but to expose the reality of the time. Discrimination to the female status in the literary world, and also the problems the women access to the educations, but above all the economic independence. The world is a place created by and for men. Machismo isn't something that affects only the women, this also affects the men. For this reason, we appreciate how much we have advanced. Feminism is a path that we must travel hand in hand with men. Reflection on the importance of having a quiet and private places and the millions income to be able to break without worries and produce important information to understand the evolution of the literature and the role of women. To explain this difference between the men and women in the literary field, she shows us how well Shakespeare managed to fulfill his passions and his sister being a woman is deprived in the same opportunities. This is difficult to try to imagine and compare what women live in at that time with the those who live today. This sounds also absurd, but this is the reality that even today in the sun's places they continue to live. This is fully recommended. This is the first time I read one of Virginia Woolf works, and this was incredible. I admired her analytical skill and the way she puts all those thoughts and her on the paper. Rápido. Her writing is beautiful, full metaphors, almost poetic, direct, and ironic, showing at the patriarchal society where women cannot choose anything other than to be a housewife, good teaching, literature, and writing, critique society, and defend the rights of women. Represented lead example, such as the rejection when entering a liberty for being a woman and thinks she was at head of her time. She had a wonderful mind. I can really recommend it, and in the end, you can decide if you still think in the same way.